Okay, now for most of us, reading to our children is a pretty common occurrence. Even if we don't enjoy it, or even if they don't enjoy it regularly, we've at least read one or two bedtime stories. But a lot of us want to make it a solid routine for us and for our children. As many of my viewers know, I homeschool, but I want to stress that this is not geared specifically toward homeschooling families by any means. My first tip, which is as much for you as the reader as it is to your children as the audience, do not read junk. Do not, those cheap books you get at the grocery store that really don't have a lot of plot, or maybe like 3 pages, 5 pages long, don't really have much of a story. There's not anything engaging about it. You want books that are fun, engaging, with great illustrations, great story, maybe even a little bit of humor. So go for quality stuff. And there are plenty of lists out there to tell you some great stories to read to your children. And you probably have some that you remember from your childhood that really stuck with you that you kind of might want to introduce to your children. So that right there, number one tip. My second tip is kind of the other side of that coin. There are a lot of great books out there. There are a lot of great books even geared toward children that we are often exposed to during school. The biggest one that comes to mind is like Bridge to Terabithia. We all read that in school. It is a great book. It's a wonderful book. I enjoyed reading that book. That book was very sad. The subject matter could be very, very heavy. Aside from the death that occurs in the book, which, I mean, there's spoilers if you haven't read it. There is a death in the book and it's a big one. It's a doozy. Just the family dynamic for the main character could be a little bit heavy. It's just, while exposing your children to those subject matters when they're a little bit older is not only appropriate, it's probably good for them. When you're reading to enjoy it and spend time as a family, you kind of want to steer clear of those. So don't get in your head that you have to read all of these great books. You know what I mean? Read fun stuff. Read things that are funny and silly that you guys are going to enjoy. And it'll surprise you some of the stuff that your kids will enjoy that I found reading to my children that they enjoyed. Don't get into your head that it has to be these educational stories or these, you know, Newbery Medal winner or Caldecott Medal winning books. You don't have, well, those are great and we have plenty of them. You don't have to have this like perfectly curated library. If they enjoy it and you enjoy reading to them, that's enough right there. So don't get entrapped into thinking you have to be reading these, you know, literature. You know what I mean? You don't have to do that. You can read fun, silly books. That's okay. My next tip, and this is especially true for younger children, but even a little, to an extent, older children. My oldest son is 8. He'll be 9 in October. And he still enjoys these types of books. And that is rhyming books. A couple of that spring to mind, A Room on the Broom and The Gruffalo, or even The Circus Ship. All three we own. All three are wonderful and make regular appearances in our bedtime story routine. Having words with rhythm, with rhyme, they're a little bit easier for us to read. They kind of give our voices a place to go, and the interest in them is kind of built in. So you don't have to be this great orator. You don't have to be this great speaker or anything to read rhyming books, especially if you're new to this. Start there and you'll kind of get your footing a little bit, but it's a great place to start as a beginner reader. Not like, oh, I'm level 1 reading, but reading out loud to an audience. Because even though they're your children, you might feel a little bit self-conscious, especially if you haven't done it before. So definitely start with rhyming books. Can't go wrong. And like, especially like babies, kids who are learning to read, rhyming is great for them. Do the voices. Do the voices. When I first started reading to my children, yeah, I used inflection, you know, and things like that. Sorry, my feet are falling asleep. I'm sitting cross-legged here. But I didn't necessarily give each character their own unique voice. I really didn't start doing that until we started reading the Berenstain Bear books. And there are 4 main characters that appear in that series, Mama, Papa, Brother, and Sister. I started giving them their own individual voices, and that was hugely successful with my children. They loved it. If you remember that scene in Mrs. Doubtfire when Natty tells her dad, she tells Robin Williams, she's not as good as you. She always skips part and she doesn't do the voices. The voices matter. And you don't have to be Robin Williams to do it. As an American, there are a ton of accents in America that I am very familiar with, and I'm not great at all of them, but I can do enough of it that it differentiates each character, and it gives, especially if you're reading a series, it gives each character a long-standing voice that your kids kind of picture in their head. My kids know what Amelia Bedelia sounds like because I've given her a voice. They know what Mrs. Pigglewiggle sounds like because I have given her a voice. And even men, Mr. Benedict from the Benedict Society, he has his own individual voice, slightly deeper. I have a woman's voice, but you can lower your voice a little bit, or if you're a guy reading to your children, you can soften, I would say, instead of, you can be silly and have like a higher voice, like a falsetto, but even just softening your speech will help differentiate female characters. But definitely do the voices and give them funny accents. They'll get a kick out of it. Do a Southern accent. Do a Valley Girl accent. I'm really good at that because I'm from California. Midwestern, Brooklyn, English, Irish, Caribbean, anything. The list goes on. And I'm sure if you're from Great Britain, you have the Queen's High English, and you can do Cockney, you can do a bunch of stuff. And you can kind of borrow here, there, and everywhere. So I highly encourage you to do the voices. Just do it. You're going to feel silly, but just do it. The next thing that I would encourage you to do, unless it is bedtime and your kids are laying down, if you're reading to them during the day, when they're a little bit more active, let them move around. Give them something to do with their hands. They don't have to be a rapt audience sitting still. Children are really bad at it. And it's sitting still is not made for children. It's made for boring adults. Let them move around. Give them something to do. I will give my children crafts to do if we're reading during the day. I will give them Play-Doh. When we sit in our classroom and do our reading, I let my son play with his Legos. I let him sit in, he's got like a little kitchen in there, and he'll sit and play, and he'll make me and my other son coffee or ice cream because he has all that play food and stuff. Let him do that. My other son will be drawing or tinkering, whatever. And you will be surprised at how much better they listen when they have something to do. And I know that you will see this because they will stop and ask you questions or comment to you about what they're reading. Don't think that because you're reading to them that they have to be still, or that if they're moving, they're not paying attention. They are. Trust me. Have you ever seen a little kid tinkering and doing stuff, and you're talking to another adult and you realize they're listening to you even though you thought they were just playing? That's when their ears are the most open. Think about for yourself. Like for me, I listen to podcasts and audiobooks constantly. I can't do it laying down because I will fall asleep, but I do it when I'm doing laundry or the dishes or yard work. That is when I'm really tuned into what I'm listening to. So that is true for adults, absolutely true for children. Let them move around. To add to this, try implementing a tea time. My sons and I do this every Friday, and this was initially, I saw the idea, it's usually used with poetry tea time. We will gather up some snacks. Usually we'll bake something. I'll buy those, those Pillsbury cinnamon rolls you just stick in the oven and frost, or I'll pick up a $5 box of cookies from Walmart, that big box, and I'll put them in the freezer and pull a few out. We'll make some tea. We like chai tea lattes. We will make hot cocoa in the winter, or we will make like lemonade, iced tea, whatever, punch. In the summertime, we'll have our tea. We use nice teacups and stuff. They will eat their snack, keep their little fingers busy, and we'll read. That is a great way to get your kids interested in reading because it means food. So definitely consider implementing a tea time, whether it's on the weekend or maybe as part of your dinner routine if it's not going to be too disruptive and if you have kind of the capacity to do that. But pick maybe one day a week or even one day a month where you guys sit down, do tea, and read. And it will become such a joy. My oldest son, the first time we did it, he said, "Mom, this is a delight." And that's exactly what you want to hear when you're doing this type of stuff with your children. So definitely consider that. Another great tip, especially if you just can't do the reading thing, feel too self-conscious, maybe you're not a very strong reader yourself, listen to audiobooks. Audiobooks count. It is exposing your children to an amazing breadth of language. Even children's books. Children's books will expose your children to language that they will not even be exposed to if they were watching a grown-up sitcom. You will get an amazing variance of words. You will be shocked when you start reading quality children's books, the amount of language that's in them. So audiobooks definitely count. You can do them in the car if you guys are driving someplace. Again, if you guys are doing chores, put on an audiobook. Maybe you and your kids sort socks together. Put on an audiobook.